Dewardric McNeal is managing director at Longview Global and a CNBC contributor. Dewardric, always good to have you with us. And this really is squarely focused, you know, when you first look at the headlines, you think about the American gaming companies, really no impact on the U.S. gaming companies. This is all about the homegrown gaming companies in China, which makes it even more dramatic. How much of a parallel is there between what is happening here in gaming and what had happened, let's say, with Alibaba and some of the other tech giants a couple of years ago?
Well, thanks for having me, Melissa. Always good to see you. Let me start by saying I was actually surprised by the substantial reaction that the markets had to what are essentially draft regulations. This process is open for public comment, Melissa, until January the 22nd. So that's a month from today. But what it says to me, this reaction says to me that companies have an apprehension about the efficacy of China's regulatory public comments process. And this is a challenge that investors believe that a draft regulation means this is where the regulators, the government wants to take an industry, and it's best for them to get there and get there quickly. And this rapid adaptation, Melissa, will have an impact on the bottom line if these companies are able to change their revenue model to the point where they can earn revenue in this new regulatory environment. The question remains, Melissa, as we saw with the tech industry, is this it, or is there something else to come? And so when are we going to have a stable regulatory environment where a new normal has been established? And without that, it's going to be extremely difficult to have a long-term plan, and this will impact companies' bottom lines in this industry.
Dewardric, it's Tim. I think your analysis of the market response is interesting, and I think you've got a great call on this. But didn't you kind of answer your own question? It's almost like it's exactly right. Investors are questioning this process, and it's fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me in China right now. And we've seen the attacks on Tencent. I mean, Tencent to me seems to be in the crosshairs of multiple sectors that seem to be seen as strategic priorities, strategic industries. Obviously, the cyber dynamic of 18 months ago or 2 years ago was one that really took down Baba and Tencent aggressively. But as you drill into things like gaming, and it just seems to me that there is no place to understand where it stops. As someone that's been investing in EM, I've seen this go on in different countries where the government was going sector by sector. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tim. Look, I will say I'll give the investors in this space a little bit of credit because it's been a whipsaw. So late 2021, we saw a heavy crackdown. This year, we saw some games being approved. And so we were unsure whether or not we were done. But I think today we got a real signal that we're not done. And so it's very hard to call in these sectors. And it may mean for investors that once a sector is targeted, no matter how moderate the regulatory environment may be, that they back off because they don't know what's coming. And that's what makes this so challenging, I think, for investors and companies trying to operate in this environment.
So there's uncertainty for investors when it comes to the regulatory environment. And then there's also uncertainty because of politics. The Taiwan elections are in January. How much of that is going to be a reason for the U.S. and China to tussle once again?
Well, I think you've seen the Biden administration try their best to put a floor, and I do indicate a floor under the relationship, understanding how challenging the 2024 environment will be starting in January with the presidential elections in Taiwan. And if the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party, the current ruling party, wins again, Melissa, I think we're going to have to really see how China responds to this. They don't have the greatest respect for the current ruling party, but it's looking like it will be the DPP's election to lose. And so right in January, we're going to get a real sense of how China is going to play this. And this will have an impact on U.S.-China relations going into a November U.S. presidential election. So it's going to be a volatile 2024. So I think investors should keep that in mind.
Just quickly, Dewardric, do you think President Biden or any congressional leaders call the winner of the Taiwan elections? Call meaning like pick up the phone.
I'm familiar with what Trump did, which certainly broke tradition. I don't expect that we will see that from this administration. I think that was an anomaly. We survived that. That was a very, very provocative move. Many people will argue. I don't expect we will see that from the Biden administration.